90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Our special guest today is Renaye Thornborrow, and she is the CEO of Adventures in Wisdom, and she's involved in life coaching for kids and adults. And she's going to talk about coaching skills for lawyers, how we can coach our colleagues, our clients, and perhaps ourselves to do a better job as a counselor and attorney at law. Renaye, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thanks for having me, Ken. It's great. It's a joy to be here.
What got you interested in the field of coaching skills?
Ken, when I discovered the world of personal development, it was right out of college when I had an opportunity to read something other than textbooks. And I remember thinking to myself, why didn't I learn this when I was a kid? It made no sense to me that the life coaching world and personal development world focuses on grown-ups when those core thoughts and beliefs that shape who we are and what we think is possible for our lives are formed when we're really young. I knew that I wanted my children to learn this when I had children. Many years later, I became an expert in personal development over the years. But when I had my children young, I couldn't find anything out there to help them learn these mindset skills. And so that's when I started working with them on my own. My vision grew, and I eventually started Adventures in Wisdom. We focus on certifying people to become life coaches for kids. Been doing that for the last 10 years, have coaches in over 30 countries who are using our work with children.
Okay, in terms of yo-yo self-esteem, lawyers may never have learned about self-esteem in law school. Perhaps their clients did not learn about it in life. And sometimes in litigation and in business discussions and negotiation, there's a lot of competition. Not everyone believes in a win-win resolution. So how can it take a toll on self-esteem, and how can lawyers prepare to do battle for their clients, reinforce their self-esteem as well as that of their clients?
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't realize is that self-esteem isn't something you either have or don't have. Self-esteem is a skill. It's a skill that can be developed, and it's all about mindset. And mindset is all about how we think. And so you use the term yo-yo self-esteem. That's something that we use to help children understand, and grown-ups, is that oftentimes people tie their self-esteem to what's going on outside of them. Win a case, they feel great about themselves. Lose a case, down in the dumps. Self-esteem can go up and down based on whatever is happening. And so one of the things that we really work on in helping people develop self-esteem is helping them understand that events in life are neutral. And it's how we define our events as human beings. We get to define what that event means. And when it comes to an event such as losing a case, we can say, okay, lost this case, I'm a loser. Or we can take that event and say, I lost this case. What can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? How can I leave this situation feeling more empowered? And we've got a bunch of mindset skills that help build around that. But essentially, it's learning how to separate an event from who we are as a person.
And there's a long process before anyone actually loses a case. There might be litigation, discovery issues, the exchange of information. There may be negotiations. There may be a chance to use alternate dispute resolution, such as mediation, to achieve a favorable outcome or a win-win situation. So, and in litigation and during a trial, there can be a lot of pressure on clients and litigants and attorneys as well. And sometimes you have to work with the hand you're dealt, what the facts show, the judge you're dealt with, what some of the laws may be, some favorable to you, others maybe not so. You're saying it's not something you should take personally. You should just do the best job you can under the circumstances, and the clients have to figure out what the best resolution is under the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a matter of looking at that event and looking at the facts of what happened, not a judgment about yourself, but what happened and learning from it. And that's how we grow as people.
And some parties to litigation or parties to negotiation or their attorneys may act like bullies. What is the best mindset or the best protocol for combating some of that and protecting yourself and your clients and perhaps trying to steer the discussions toward a more fruitful path?
What makes bullying so challenging is when it happens, we immediately get triggered, and it brings up our fear, defensiveness, and wanting to fight back. And so what it's doing in our brain is triggering what's called the amygdala in our brain, which is our fight or flight. And when we're in our fight or flight, we're not in our frontal lobes thinking and being mature people that we want to be when we're in a calm situation. So one of the first things we want to do is to try to get back into our frontal lobes. And one of the best techniques for that is deep breathing, just doing 3 to 5 really deep breaths, slow, deep breaths, because what that does is it triggers our parasympathetic nervous system, which helps calm us down and helps get us back into our frontal lobes. Whenever we're dealing with a bully, and I've personally been in this situation, in a professional situation where I had a coworker who was bullying towards me, and it is a horrible, horrible situation. But it's a matter of learning that it's not about who you are as a person. It's really about who that person is as a person and their inability to feel empowered in their own life. And the only way they feel like they can do that is by being, downright mean, aggressive towards other people in their lives as well.
And perhaps they're not as fully versed in the facts or the issues in your particular case or the different scenarios, the different outcomes that are possible. And sometimes in law, you want to put a buffer. If they can't calm down, perhaps you ask the judge to handle negotiations, or you bring in a mediator to act as a buffer and act as a facilitator to go between one side and the other, and just try to get them in a more constructive-based situation.
Absolutely, because when we're not in our frontal lobes, nothing can really get resolved. It's just going to create more hurtful feelings. So if we can step away from the situation or get someone else involved to help mediate that situation, that is very helpful. And
should you, if you're on the receiving end, you just end it and just tell the other attorneys, we'll return when you're ready to discuss the facts and the law in a productive manner, or we'll bring in a mediator since you can't behave appropriately?
Yeah, absolutely, if you can, because when you've got someone coming at you as a bully, they're not coming at you from logic and reasoning. They're coming at you from their own fear and aggression. And essentially their 9-year-old self is coming at you. And it doesn't do any good to try to have a rational conversation from someone who's in that state of mind.
And they think that behavior will get the best for them and their client. And you've got to just tell them it's not appropriate. It's not going to work in a legal setting, or it's not going to help resolve anything.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can have kind of 2 different ways that can handle. One is where somebody gets triggered and comes after you. The other is when it's their strategy, that's their technique and how they try to intimidate you as an attorney. So that's even more important, to step away and get someone else to intervene.
And if it's being directed at you, is it good to ask for a timeout? Just suggest that this is our agenda and scenario and the way we're going to resolve it. And if they can't agree to that process, that the discussion is going to have to end for the moment?
Exactly.
I just want to remind our listeners that our guest is Renaye Thornborrow. She's the CEO of Adventures in Wisdom, and she has written about, and we'll talk about other aspects of it in dealing with the law and legal issues. You've come up with different strategies for teaching why wisdom's so important in relationships and for our personal development and in resolving disputes. So just explain to us how you got involved in this area and what your book is about and how it can be of help to lawyers and their clients.
As I was mentioning earlier, I was really wanting to teach these concepts to my own children. When I was working with them when they were young, I couldn't find anything out there to help teach them about their mindset and how to develop mindset skills for confidence and resilience and self-esteem and self-leadership. And Ken, these are things, it's a missing link in our education system at all levels, elementary, middle, high school, even universities and law school, right? We're not taught these skills, and yet they're critical life skills for all of us to be able to really function and to be who we're meant to be in the world and reach our fullest potential. That's how I was inspired to create this curriculum. It was more than just one book. I have 27 different kind of books, or what we call skill books, that I wrote as part of a curriculum that we certify our coaches to be able to use in bringing life coaching and personal development work to children. So the way we support out in the world is for those who are looking for support for their children in their lives, or those who maybe want to work with children on a volunteer basis or even on a part-time basis to be able to become a coach.
The skills that you mentioned, they're going to be explained on your website. Can you just give us your website again?
Yes, it's adventuresinwisdom.com. We actually have one of these skill books, one of these free stories on our website. It teaches the skill of positive self-talk. And Ken, positive self-talk is a critical mindset skill for grown-ups too. It is the core to our self-esteem, our confidence, our resilience, and even our happiness. And it's one of the reasons why we get that one away.
And lawyers can get that information for free on their site, or clients facing legal issues or just challenges in life can get that for free on their site. And this is something that's not really dealt in law school, in professional school, in college, or even in the standard kindergarten to 12th grade education.
Not at all. And like I said, I was like, why didn't I learn this when I was a kid? Because I personally struggled with yo-yo self-esteem. And from the outside, everybody thought, oh, Renaye had it all together. I was a super high achiever, excellent student, all, sports, this, that, and the other. Inside, I was a mess. If I did great on a test, felt great about myself. If I messed up in a soccer game, down I went, up and down and up and down. And it wasn't until I discovered this world of personal development and self-talk and mindset work and how my brain works that I was really able to break free of a lot of those patterns. I haven't done it 100%. We're constantly in the work, but it really is empowering for all of us to learn about how our mind works, the brain science behind it, so that we can come from a more empowered point of view in our lives. And
this is so we can be empowered with a case or legal situation is not going as well as we or the client would like. And
absolutely.
So if you're a colleague or a boss and you want to support that lawyer who's on the front line and having a difficult situation, what can you say or do?
One is to support someone in calming down if they're upset. Right? And that's the deep breathing, getting us back into our frontal lobes. The second thing is to talk about to look at the situation from a factual standpoint. What is going on, separating that event from who they are as a person, and then how you can tackle that as a problem and not as a judgment of that attorney or that attorney's results. I mean, so many times us as human beings and adults, we define ourselves based on the results that we're creating. Results are just results. They're not who we are as people. Our self-esteem, when we have healthy self-esteem, it comes from the inside out, not based on what's going on outside of ourselves.
And sometimes it's the win or lose scenario, and it's always good if lawyers or their clients bring up other options, such as negotiation, a constructive negotiation, mediation, someplace so there's some win-win scenario, or each side has a situation they can live with, and it's not a win or lose situation, which is really all the law provides. And sometimes both parties are not happy with the court's ability to resolve a legal dispute.
Right.
In terms of leadership, what other tips do you have for law firm leaders or people in their own life trying to lead an organization or lead their family?
And even leading ourselves, I think.
Or ourselves.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what it starts with, actually. I think it's really paying attention to what we tell ourselves about situations. It's the stories that we make up in our head about what's going on when we're leading people, leading ourselves, that can send us down a darker path. And so if we could pause for a minute when we find ourselves kind of going down that path and say, okay, what's really happening here? What's an empowered way I can look at this? What's a way that I can see this person or the situation in the best light to be able to move forward? That is extremely helpful. It can be hard to do. It takes a lot of practice. I practice it all the time, and I'm not 100%. But I think that's a really powerful way when we're talking about leadership, is looking at how we are experiencing the world, because our thoughts shape our experiences. But as human beings, the great news is that we get to choose our thoughts.
What thoughts should you try to conjure up, or can you say to someone, if you're a colleague, a friend, a client, if they're going through a difficult time? So
you say, one of my favorite questions when someone's not sure how to handle something or what to do is to ask yourself, how can I? How can I do this? How can I make this happen? How can I make this better? Because the question, how can I, gets our brain, both our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, working to help solve that problem. Our subconscious mind is so powerful. And when we ask that question, it's putting it, there's a part of our brain we call our reticular activating system. And that's the part of our brain on the subconscious level that is looking for ways to support us in solving or gaining whatever it is that we're interested in, whatever we're saying that we're wanting to achieve. It's a critical part in setting and achieving our goals. So that using that question, I think, is a very powerful question. If you've got someone who's struggling, they're not quite sure how to do something, asking that question and possibly brainstorming with them. What are some possible options? It could be, what can I do right now? What can I do within the next day? What can I do within the next week? What can I do within the next month? Who else can help? Asking some of those kinds of questions.
And maybe it's there might be different skills and tasks in the law office. Maybe they're better suited for some other skills or tasks and would do better with those.
You're absolutely right.
And this can be true in any type of business or organization.
It can, yes.
Along those same lines, is it an important job of ourselves to build our own self-esteem or to build that of their colleagues or our subordinates in a law firm or in any organization?
Well, I think self-esteem can only be built by ourselves. True self-esteem comes from the inside out, based on how we choose to think about ourselves. And those are from within our own thoughts. And that's why the skill of positive self-talk is so important. One of the things that we teach kids is how to honor our uniqueness and the uniqueness of others. So there's something that we talk about, the danger of comparison. Human beings live in comparison, seeing ourselves as better than or less than others. When we see ourselves as better than, that's when we get those people who are bullies and who are aggressive towards others, or they discriminate, or
and on the flip side, we see ourselves as less than when we look at social media, when we look at movies,
Absolutely.
when we look at everyone else has it perfectly or better or smarter or richer on the outside. Yeah. How can we counter that or put some truth into it?
So putting the truth in it is exactly to honor our uniqueness while being able to honor the uniqueness of others. That is the number one kind of antidote to comparison. Because once we do that, once we really can see ourselves in the gift of who we are, then we can be okay with other people's gifts without seeing ourselves as less than or even better than.
And if you are a friend, a colleague, a subordinate, a superior, someone who's having a challenging time with that, how can you support them? I realize you said it has to come within, but what can someone do to support them or to make it easier for them to see that?
Explore that with them, especially depending on your relationship. I mean, one of the things we do with kids is we have them explore what we call the gift of me. And we have prompting questions where they get to really get to know who they are and honor their uniqueness. And then part two of that exercise is to have them talk to other people and find out what they most enjoy and what makes them unique. And so it helps them really see, okay, this is what makes me unique. This is what makes these other people unique. And it really helps them learn. It helps our kids learn about diversity, about compassion, and about how to honor themselves and their own uniqueness.
Can they also change to some degree the course of events? If they're taking a class, if you have a case that's not going well, if a work situation is not going well, how can you guide it to a better ending? Maybe not perfect, but a better ending.
Yeah. Well, there's the whole thing, put yourself in someone else's shoes kind of situation. You try to see the situation from both perspectives.
Well, also, I'm just saying maybe you can help them if you study a little harder, if you find your weak area, if you read it over again, if you get extra help, if you change your focus, maybe it will work out a little better.
Absolutely. And like you said, asking for help is a huge one that a lot of people don't do, is to ask for support. And
that is true even for lawyers. And a client is asking help by going to the lawyer. And if a lawyer needs help or needs brainstorming or needs ideas, it's good to reach out to clients or maybe strangers at a bar association. Just say, I have this situation. Have you ever encountered it? Or do you think this will work? I think most lawyers will try to give a colleague some ideas and some support.
Well, I love that because it's the brain. It's the brain power of bringing multiple people together. And sometimes people feel like, especially when they're in a leadership role, we were talking about leadership earlier, they feel like they have to be the smartest person in the room. Well, sometimes the smartest person in the room is the one who brings the other smart people in to help solve the problem so we get the best answer, not the leader's answer.
And you may be a leader and a problem solver and a rising star with certain areas, but now you're being challenged. Maybe it's a new area or it's not your strong point or you're just stumped by it. And it's, as you're saying, it's okay and very important you ask for help and support.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you find yourself emotionally triggered by whatever's going on. That's when we really need to bring someone in. We call it having your coach. Of course, we don't use the wordy dirt when we're talking to kids.
Right, we don't want, and we don't use it on the air either.
But with our attorneys, they might.
But everyone goes through this. Even people at the top, people at the bottom. Everyone has something they're stumped by. They feel they're not helping their client, and it's nothing. It's important for themselves and their client and their legal situation to see what resources are available and ask for a little extra help.
That's right, Ken.
And maybe someone else needs to take over the case. You're not going to be the perfect lawyer for every situation, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about building those kinds of relationships with other lawyers is that they will come to you when they need help.
Right, you may have a different background, experience, and skill set.
Exactly.
I would just like to remind our listeners, we're talking with Renaye Thornborrow. We're talking about coaching skills for lawyers and others. And part of that is helping lawyers to build and maintain their self-esteem and help their clients to do that as well. As we mentioned before, litigation can be like combat and warfare. And how can we put on, let's say, a safety vest and provide support for ourselves, protection for ourselves and our clients while we're in the crossfire, so to speak?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things because it's when we get triggered, as I mentioned earlier, is that we leave the frontal lobes where we're thinking of our brain, where we're thinking and our critical reasoning skills straight into our amygdala, fight or flight, and that's where we have difficulty functioning. So what we just need to do is really work on what is it that helps us remain calm in a situation, whether it's the deep breathing or asking for support, asking someone to step in and be with us while we're in a situation like that as well. That's just one of the most critical things from when it's coming on, but also just to realize that when it's coming at us, what's happening, this event is not who we are as a person. It's a challenge that we're dealing with. Even if we messed up, we teach kids about managing mistakes. Same thing with adults. When we mess up, how do we separate what happened from who we are? And
on the note of managing mistakes, what should a lawyer do if there's some issue that's not going as well as they or the client would like? How can they manage or remedy, let's say, a mistake? Yeah, so when it comes to mistakes, it's a matter of, again, separating what happened from who we are as a person and not carrying it around. Because as human beings, what we tend to do is when we make a mistake is we carry it around with us and we ruminate about it for sometimes hours, sometimes days. And if you think about like a tiger, if a tiger misses the hunt, it doesn't sit there and go, oh gosh, for the next 5 days, I missed the elk. It just goes out and keeps hunting, and just realizing that mistakes are part of life, and to be able to pick ourselves up again. And sometimes it's good to have a plan B, because depending on what happens in the course of a case or litigation, having options and alternates and maybe discussing them with the client up front about what the first approach is going to be, with an alternate approach or a second approach, and perhaps a third approach if that becomes necessary. And of course, there may be ability to take a time out if something's not going the way, or you're having a hard day, or the client's having a hard day. You might be able to take a short time out at least to recalculate things and brainstorm and consult colleagues. Absolutely. Time out doesn't have to be a bad thing. What are some final words of wisdom that you have for lawyers and their clients on self-esteem and to be a coach to themselves and others? I think the most critical skill for any of us to develop is that of positive self-talk, because the more we use positive self-talk, the more we're programming our brain to see ourselves as our highest selves and to feel good about ourselves, to believe in ourselves, which is on our confidence side, and just practicing that every day. So having a mantra that you say to yourself, a positive mantra or saying something empowering that you say to yourself every time you see your reflection, whether you're brushing your teeth in the morning or walking past a window
and you see your reflection, practicing that, because what you're doing is you're creating strong, what we call neural pathways in the brain. That's our neural pathways are how we think. It's how we know our world. And the stronger our neural pathways, that's creating our habit. And what we want to do is strengthen neural pathways of positive self-talk so that positive self-talk becomes our habit. And that's how we see it. Because then we're coming from an empowered point of view, no matter what's going on outside of us.
And what are some examples of power self-talk, positive self-talk a lawyer can use?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to have a positive day today, or this is the best day ever, or, it's language that really works for you. I rock all my cases, or, I'm brilliant, or just whatever really resonates with you, or I'm going to make a positive difference today, or every day in every way I'm getting better and better.
And should we try to share that enthusiasm and positivity with our colleagues, perhaps let them vent about things not going so well, or some of their concerns are, to let them release them into the universe?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes in the personal development world, people be like, oh, you don't talk about the negative stuff. I think that it's important to get it out, because what we resist will persist. If we don't get it out and process it, we're going to ruminate about it. So I think it is good to have a dumping session. Just like when we mess up, I always say it's okay to have a pity party. Just make it, 5 minutes, few hours,
and sometimes coming back to the office from COVID, people are doing that too. How did your family fare? How did you fare through COVID? How are you doing now? Anything I can help with? And you probably wish people would say that to you as well.
Well, what's interesting is that a lot of times people don't want to complain, or if you look at the statistics, our adults and our kids are really struggling with their mental health. So there's never been a more important time for us to learn and develop these mindset skills, because the coaching is a very important part of the prevention side when you're looking at the mental health continuum. Coaching works on prevention. We want to prevent children from winding up in counselors' offices, and same thing with adults. Coaching can be very, very empowering, help you get support in navigating your life and challenges of your life in a very empowered way.
And very briefly, I think you wanted to talk about the difference between coaching and counseling and something that's deeper than that.
Well, it's really important for people to understand that if you look at mental health on a continuum, on one end you have mental wellness, on the other end you have mental illness. Counselors and therapists are focusing on mental illness. They're diagnosing, assessing, and treating people with mental illness, more serious issues. Coaching focuses on mental wellness, which is on the prevention side. We're supporting people in proactively developing their self-esteem, resilience, and coping skills. Their
positive behaviors.
Self-leadership, absolutely. And research shows that people who express gratitude tend to be happier. Those who have goals tend to also be happier and have higher quality of life.
And also, we can be a champion in bolstering that in our colleagues and our clients.
Absolutely, you can. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to thank Renaye Thornborrow for being our guest on Law You Should Know, and her website is Adventures in Wisdom for more information on her program and her books. You've been listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC. If you missed any part of the program or you want to tell someone else about it, the podcast is available at nccradio.org. Please join us next week at the same time for another program on Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College.